For hundreds of years, the Bermuda Triangle has been one of the most mysterious regions across the globe, and has been rumored to be the site of numerous unexplained disappearances from ships and planes to even people. Well, wait no further, because today we're diving deep into the rabbit hole and I'm gonna share with you some of the craziest mysteries surrounding the elusive Devil's Triangle that I could find. Let's go. Starting us off at number 10 is Flight 441. Back in 1954, one of the most esteemed US Navy carriers was scheduled to fly to the beautiful islands of Azores. And at the time, the aircraft was a pretty big deal because it could fly over the Atlantic Ocean in about 8.5 hours, which for the time was record speed. On the morning of October 30th, 42 passengers boarded the flight, all of which were either naval officers or their families. But just 400 miles from the coast, all radio communication with the plane was lost, and it seemed to have vanished from reality. Confused and scared for the 42 missing passengers and plane, a search party went out looking for them, but no sign of wreckage or remains was found between New Jersey and the Azores. The aircraft was equipped with over 100 life vests, as well as life rafts, paper cups, and exposure suits, and had the plane crashed in any way, all of that should have been scattered in the sea. But like I said, nothing that was on board that flight was ever seen again. Next up at number 9 is Flight 19. On December 5th, 1945, a training fleet of 14 Avenger torpedo bombers mysteriously disappeared while flying over the Atlantic Ocean. The Navy planes were being led by the experienced pilot Charles C. Taylor, and the plan was to fly east of Fort Lauderdale for 227 kilometers before heading north for 117, then scooting right back around for 230 kilometers to finish the training lap. But strangely, during the flight, Taylor's compass stopped working, and it's believed he mistook the small Bermuda Islands below for the Florida Keys, resulting in the flight heading over the open sea and away from land. They lost contact with the land and never made it back to the base, and to this day no one knows what happened to the 14 men that were flying those planes. Even stranger is that the Navy sent out search and rescue aircraft to try and find any trace of the missing people and planes. They too mysteriously disappeared and never returned. Coming in at number 8, a Trislander. Though it might seem like it from this list, not every strange disappearance happened before most of us were born. In fact, on December 15th, 2008, a Trislander was leaving Santiago and heading towards New York with 12 passengers on board. But after a mere 35 minutes in flight, the aircraft completely vanished from the radar, terrifying the operations crew. They tried to make contact with the plane, but sadly they were not able to get through to them, so a massive search was launched by the Coast Guard. Tragically, just as many before it, the plane was never tracked down. Its last known location was 4 miles west of the West Caicos Islands, pretty much smack in the middle of the dreaded Bermuda Triangle. Coming in at number 7, Piper Navajo. On November 3rd, 1978, Captain Irving Rivers was departing from St. Croix with Eastern Caribbean Airways. Rivers was a well-seasoned pilot with many years of experience and was making the solo flight over to St. Thomas to pick up some passengers. The day started out normal. Great even. Temperatures were warm, skies were clear, and it looked like it was just gonna be your average day in the sky. But during the flight, the control tower operator radioed over to Rivers suggesting a slight course correction to avoid a small shower up ahead. Rivers agreed and made the adjustment. Then, a mere 1.6 kilometers from landing the plane in St. Thomas, after already being cleared for landing, the red and green lights on the radar disappeared. The control tower had lost the location of the plane out of nowhere. An emergency search was immediately launched, but nothing was ever found, and no one has ever been able to figure out where the plane or Captain Rivers went. Coming in at number 6, Star Tiger. On the morning of January 28, 1948, crew and passengers boarded the Star Tiger in Lisbon, only to be forced to evacuate the plane after Captain McMillan felt the engine needed some attention. After a 2.5-hour wait, they were on their way in the sky, but the weather was so bad that their 75-minute stop in Santa Maria turned into an overnight layover to wait until things cleared up. So on the 29th, the 16 passengers boarded a third time onto the plane, headed for Bermuda, and despite strong winds, it seemed as though it was off to a good start. The captain decided to fly low to try and avoid the high winds, and another plane that had taken off an hour prior had agreed to radio communicate weather information with McMillan. Soon after takeoff, they were lashed with heavy rain and strong winds, but still he continued on. After 10 hours in the air, he was finally starting to approach Bermuda, and the trip was almost done. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, all communication was lost with Star Tiger, and the aircraft, along with all the passengers and crew aboard, disappeared without a trace. While skeptics of the phenomenon think it could have had something to do with the engine issues experienced earlier or bad weather, the timing of Star Tiger's disappearance was all too coincidental and definitely added suspicion to the legend. Coming in at number 5, Flight 201. On March 31st, 1984, a Cessna plane departed Fort Lauderdale towards Bimini Island in the Bahamas, but mysteriously, it never arrived at its destination. All the passengers on board were employees of the company, which usually would be the best case scenario should any kind of emergency happen, but despite the experienced crew, something went very wrong and there was no fixing it. About midway to the destination, the plane started getting slow, like strangely slow, but no radio signals were made indicating any kind of distress. Then, as if out of a movie, the plane fell from the sky and crashed into the ocean below, vanishing from the radar. A woman even reported being a witness to the plunging plane about a mile offshore, but no wreckage from the crash was ever found. It remains one of the greater mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle, as especially considering there was an eyewitness to the crash, why was no one ever able to find any evidence of the disaster? Coming in at number 4, Star Ariel. Just a year after the Star Tiger was lost forever, another Tudor 4 aircraft was set to fly from Bermuda to Jamaica. On the morning of January 17th, 1949, another plane was actually scheduled to fly the passengers, but after experiencing an engine failure, it was out of commission, and so the passengers were moved over to the Star Ariel. Now, I'm not saying that the other plane's engine failure was a sign that people shouldn't be flying that day, but I'm also not saying that. Anyway, the 7 crew members and 13 passengers promptly boarded the Jamaica-destined plane and they were off. The flight started off smoothly, it was beautiful weather, and so the captain went up to a high altitude to take advantage of it. About an hour into the flight, he contacted the destination airport, keeping them updated with his ETA and whatnot. Then after another hour, he let them know he was changing his frequency, and that was the last anyone heard from the captain. The plane never arrived in Jamaica, and no one on the plane was ever seen or heard from again. A search party deployed fairly quickly after their disappearance, but not a shred of wreckage was found. It was like they vanished out of thin air. Coming in at number 3, a fishing trip. In July of 2015, 2 teenage friends, Austin Stephanos and Perry Cohen, often went out fishing together. The boat they used belonged to Austin's family, and his dad and grandfather were very confident in his abilities to maneuver it, saying he had driven it many times. Still, the boys usually stayed fairly close to the coast. One night, however, they decided to take a trip over to the Bahamas together. So the next morning, they made their way over to the marina. Austin texted his parents at 11:25 a.m. and then the pair boarded the 19-foot family boat and set sail on their fishing trip to the Bahamas. Shortly after their departure, a bad storm started to appear and the National Weather Service announced an official warning, but it was too late for the boys at sea. Now, no one knows exactly what happened to them, but somewhere in the Atlantic, the two disappeared forever. The boat they had been driving was later found with a few items on board, but sadly the boys were never seen again. Coming in at number 2, the USS Cyclops. In January of 1918, the US Navy set out its largest ship to sail from Virginia to Brazil, then back to Baltimore through the Bermuda region. The ship was 540 feet long by 65 feet wide and was carrying 10,800 tons of manganese ore with about 309 crew members on board. So as you can imagine, it wasn't hard to miss. The ship arrived in Rio de Janeiro, where she stayed for 2 weeks while the cargo was loaded and unloaded. Then on the morning of February 15th, the crew made their way to Bahia, Brazil, which was their only scheduled stop on their way back to the States. 2 days later, the ship set sail for Baltimore and was expected to arrive on March 13th. But on March 3rd, the ship made an odd and unplanned stop in Barbados and was never seen or heard from again. No remains of the ship or crew members were ever found, and the captain never sent a distress signal at any time during the disappearance. While some speculate that the manganese ore could have exploded or that even a giant octopus dragged them down, most believe it was lost to the unexplainable phenomenon of the Bermuda Triangle. And last up today is the Witchcraft. Back in December of 1967, Captain Dan Burach and his friend Patrick Horgan departed Miami in their cabin cruiser named Witchcraft. Now, maybe it's just me, but that does feel like an all too on-the-nose coincidence. Anyways, the pair were traveling on a 23-foot luxury yacht with the innocent intention of watching Miami's Christmas light show from a nice view at sea. But after reaching just 1 mile from the shore, the Coast Guard received a call from the captain of the boat stating that his ship had hit something. The captain assured the Coast Guard it was nothing serious and that there was no substantial damage, but still the Coast Guard wanted to come out and see for himself. The guard immediately left his station and in just 19 minutes arrived at the area where the Witchcraft was, or rather should have been. The area indicating the ship's location was completely deserted, with no signs of any ship having been stranded or even present there previously. Over the next few days, officials searched hundreds of square miles through the ocean to track down the lost ship, but they were never able to track it or the 2 men aboard. Thanks so much for watching today, guys. I'm Kennedy. If you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you next time.